It was Christmas and I was a freshman in high school. My family has been split up for some time, so normally we trade off Christmas Day and Christmas Eve each year. And this year, I had come home early from my grandparents' Christmas party, while everyone else was at my aunt and uncle's celebrating another party. When I was dropped off, my cousins offered to stay with me for a few hours, but I declined. I thought I could watch some of my new DVDs and get some alone time in this house, which is a rarity. I had noticed an unfamiliar car parked on the street, but didn't think anything of it, considering it was Christmas Eve. Probably a neighbor's relative or something. After I got inside, I locked the door, grabbed snacks, and started to settle down. I hadn't been home for more than 15 minutes when there was a knock at the door. I unlocked the door and opened it only a crack to see a man standing there. Dark hair, glasses, slightly overweight and dressed casually. He didn't look like much of a threat, but my stomach dropped. He asked. I was wondering about the car outside. Is it for sale? I told him I don't think so. Is there someone here I can talk to about it? I said, quite stupidly, no, you can come back another time. And I shut the door and turned the lock as fast as I could. He reached for the door handle immediately and started pounding on the door. I heard a string of profanities and the pounding stopped. Terrified, I was crawling on the floor to the phone, hoping he wouldn't be able to see me through one of the windows. Then I heard the noises. Our house has an open garage door, and it led through to the laundry room, where the door lock was broken and no one had bothered to fix it. Just then I heard a man yell and I saw the man through the window run to his car and drive off. My uncle had gotten him, just in time, and he scared him away. Who knows what would have happened if he hadn't made it home in time. Sadly, we didn't get the plate number, and nothing ever came of it. But I'll never be home alone again on the holidays. This story takes place 4 years ago, and it still haunts me to this day. It was Christmas night, and my family were driving home from the fancy restaurant. I, unlike my family, was tired, so the 45-minute drive seemed perpetual. On top of that, my little sister was constantly moaning about how her friend didn't get her anything for Christmas. After about 20 minutes of driving, my dad stopped at a gas station to get some cigarettes, and my sister and mother all got out to pee. I stayed in the car, and I already had gone before we left. Once they all left, I decided to play a few games on my phone. I looked at the car clock, and then I noticed that 10 minutes had passed, so I immediately wondered what was taking them so long. As soon as I peered out of the car window, I saw a man staring at our car. The man startled me, as I didn't know how long he had been watching. What made it even more unnerving is that he had a plain blank face. No expression was shown. It was hard to make out any features as it was pretty dark, and he wasn't standing in the illuminated part of the station. He was about 5'9" and looked to be middle-aged. Once he saw me notice him, he started walking towards the car. And I'd be lying if I told you I was not scared. Luckily, my dad came back with the rest of the family just as the man took a couple of steps. My dad apologized and told me he had been in an argument with the cashier. I didn't care. I was just glad that my dad was with me. I took another glance at the man outside, and he was still staring. But this time, he had an annoyed look on his face. We drove off, and for the rest of the car ride, I couldn't stop thinking about this man. This wouldn't have been too bad if it had ended there, but it didn't. Later that night, I was watching YouTube while everyone else slept, and luckily for me, a storm was raging over us. I enjoy storms. It makes me cozy as I'm lying in bed. I put my phone down and just enjoyed the ambience. That didn't last for long as I heard something smash into the window behind me. I lurched forward and nearly fell out of my bed. I thought a bird had just smashed into the window. I parted the blinds and what I saw next hunted me. I saw a man standing out by my parents' cars, looking up at my room. I took a closer look and I nearly had a heart attack. It was the same man that I saw at the gas station, only this time, when our eyes met, he grinned. Being the 14-year-old I was, I did the manly thing and screamed at the top of my lungs. My dad came running down the stairs and entered my room. "Why the hell are you screaming?" he said. I told him about the man and I explained everything that had happened. My dad grabbed a baseball bat and told me to call the police. After 10 minutes, the police turned up outside our house and found the man in our shed. He got arrested, and that was the last time I saw him. The next day, my dad inspected the house and we found the handle of our back door had been played with and damaged, but not completely broken. This gives me an eerie feeling as if he actually managed to get in. He could have harmed us, or even possibly killed us. It was Christmas time around 1995 or 96. We were all at my aunt's house on a reservation of North Dakota. Some of my family was in the living room watching television. The kids were playing in the rooms or sleeping. And my uncle, aunt, and I were all sitting at the table, putting a puzzle together. My cousin who worked at the casino would come home around midnight or 1 a.m. This night, as she pulled up and she was walking toward the house, she looked in the window and saw me sitting at the table, my uncle sitting across from me, and someone standing to the left of me, and someone standing in the corner. So she continued to walk into the house thinking nothing of it. When she got inside the house, she said her hellos and put her stuff away and came and joined us at the table. As we were sitting there talking, she looked at me and asked, "Who was standing next to me a few minutes ago, and who was in the corner?" I told her no one, and she said, "Yeah, there was someone standing next to you. It looked like your mom, and she was playing with your hair." I have long hair in which, I used to wear down all the time. She said this person was running her hand on my hair, like a mother does a child. It kind of freaked me out, being I was probably only 12 or 13 at the time. My cousin swears up and down that someone was standing over me rubbing my head and watching me put the puzzle together with my aunt and uncle, and that there was another person standing behind this person. We got around to thinking it was probably her mom she saw. She passed away on her birthday a week before Christmas back in 1992. In my family, we consider our aunts and uncles to be just like our moms and dads. After thinking that it could have been her, it didn't scare me so much. However, we couldn't figure out who the person was standing in the corner. And always around Christmas time, something strange always happens. And we just think it's her visiting. Or is it? I live on a remote, quiet street in a relatively small town. For the sake of my safety and privacy, I will not disclose the town, as I still live there to this day. It was the last day of school before Christmas break, and like any other ninth grader, I was excited to be home and play the new Call of Duty that was coming out that year. A little background here: since I was in the 6th grade, I always walked home. Today was no different. I left school around 2:37 p.m. but this time I had to take a different route home, as my street had construction. I remembered a shortcut from when I was a little kid that I used to take to school when my road or usual route was blocked or closed due to some reason. I started making my way down the side road as I did years before when I noticed a black Ford following me awful close, but doing the speed limit probably to avoid suspicion. I took a few turns to see if this vehicle was following me, and sure enough it was. I eventually made it home, and when I did, I told my parents, who then passed it off as being over-paranoid, and that was that. Fast forward a few days, and it was Christmas Eve. No sign of that car and no further incidents, until 11 p.m. rolled around, and we were settling in for bed. I remember doing my routine when my dog started barking. I yelled and said, "Shut up." I eventually got up and let them out. I want to say 8 minutes passed when I was startled out of bed, a man screaming in pain outside my window. I looked up to see my dad with a shotgun running outside to the dogs. I rushed out of my bed to the window, and just as I got there, I heard my dad yelling at this guy. And then he shot the back of the guy's black Ford speeding down our road. A police report has been filed, and it's been 4 years since the incident, and I'm now finishing school and looking at colleges. The police never found him, and I still sleep with my dogs by my bed, so the man who tried to ruin my Christmas doesn't come back. Christmas is usually everyone's favorite time of the year. It was certainly my favorite time of the year until one night that changed everything. It was the Christmas of 2018. I was sitting in my living room watching the snow get heavier and heavier. The scene created the holiday atmosphere. I was enjoying myself drinking a cup of hot cocoa until I heard a knock on my door. I thought, who could be here at this hour? It was 1:18 in the morning. I got up to open the door, and to my surprise, I saw nobody. I closed the door thinking I was being ding-dong ditched at this time, or it was all in my head. 5 minutes later, another knock on my door. I once again got up to open the door, and no one was there. So I shut it. Almost immediately after another knock on my door at this time, I was quick enough to swing the door open, and I could just get a glimpse of a kid, looked about 5 or 6 years old, running towards a house that was adjacent to mine. Quite surprisingly, I never knew who lived there, and quite frankly, I never seemed to care. However, this time I wanted to know why such a little kid was out roaming about in the middle of the night, so I planned to go over there the next morning. Morning finally came, and I headed towards the house where I'm sure I saw the little boy run into. To my surprise, nobody answered the door. I figured they weren't home, and I would come back later. That evening, I tried going back to the house, and once again, I knocked, no answer. This was quite strange. I then tried the side door, and to my surprise, the door wasn't locked. Curiosity got the better of me, and I unlawfully entered the house, knowing I wasn't breaking and entering. As soon as I entered the house, I smelled something foul in the air, the smell of rotting meat. The inside of this house looked like nobody had lived there for years. I decided to check out the upstairs of the house. I climbed up the stairs and I went to the top step. There were about 5 bedrooms adjacent to each other. I checked out the one on my right. Nothing too special, just a bed and a closet. I checked out the rest of the rooms and found nothing. Great, I thought to myself. This was a complete waste of my time. And just as I was about to leave, a woman tapped me on my shoulder. It startled me. I knew I was caught red-handed, but just as I could say anything, the woman put her hand over my mouth and shushed me. I slowly backed away and sprinted back to my house. I heard the blood-curdling scream of a woman telling me to come back. I got back to my house and I decided to not call the cops. At 3 a.m., I woke up to sounds outside of my window. I looked out and I saw the same woman staring back at me with a wide smile that ran across her face. Her crazed eyes stared back at me on the other side of the glass. I fell back in shock and I dialed 911, and the cops were at my location within minutes. I had told them what happened, and they searched the house and found nothing. They told me there were no signs of anyone there since the horrifying murder that took place inside the very house. I was shocked. I haven't heard of what happened at all, and it was an ongoing investigation. The cops weren't even able to give me information, so I desperately wanted to know, though. The next day, I did some research, and what I found made me puke. On December 31st, a mother and her son were brutally murdered inside that same house, and their bodies are yet to be found. I linked everything together, and I stared at myself in the mirror in pure horror. The events that took place this day changed me forever. The next 8 months, I quit my job and had to get therapy for the rest of the year. I started looking into depression and into thoughts of ending my own life. I would wake up at late hours of the night and see this woman's crazed smile staring down at me, and I would scream in pure horror. It's been a year since this traumatizing experience, and I have never been the same person as I used to be. By the time you read this, I'll be dead or somewhere far away, very far away. This story takes place on one of the best nights for kids around America, but one of the worst nights for me. It was Christmas Eve of 2019. For a little backstory, 3 or 4 months before this event took place, I broke up with my girlfriend. The event that caused me to break up with her was she stole over $900 from me. I called her and all she said was, before she left, that this isn't over. Fast forward 3 months to Christmas Eve. Since we live in Texas and have a house in the hills, every year on Christmas my family usually goes there to celebrate Christmas. However, this year, I couldn't make it because I had to work. This year I was 17 years old and just got a job by a local supermarket and had to work all Christmas Day. I had no problem being home alone. On Christmas Eve night, it was getting late, probably 11 o'clock or so. I decided to take a shower and go to bed as I needed to get up early for the next day. As I started to shower, I heard a strange noise coming from the garage, sort of like a metallic banging or something dropping. I thought it was some form of a heater because I put the water as hot as I could. I took my shower. When I finished my shower, I went to go to bed, and as I did, I heard the noise again. Although this time, it was on the other side of the yard. I was confused because I didn't think there was anything over there. I went to go look outside the window and see. I looked out and didn't see anything but my backyard, completely empty. I completely disregarded it because my backyard is pretty flat and empty, and it has nowhere for someone to hide. Now it's hard to explain, but my window is fairly large, and it has a blind spot to the left where there's a corner where someone could easily hide, but I was tired and didn't think about it. As I walked off, I heard a bang, but this time it was on my window of my house, and as I looked out the window, I saw the figure of a person dressed in all black standing at my window. It made me jump, however, I wasn't too scared as I am fairly a large dude and a high school football player. This all changed when he reached for his pocket for what I assumed was a gun. I ran away from the window toward my parents' room to go retrieve my dad's shotgun. I knew he kept it in the safe and had the safe key under his pillow. As I was running to retrieve this, I dialed 911. As soon as the dispatcher answered, I heard the horrific sound of the glass shattering. I made it to my parents' room, and I shut the door quietly. I whispered into the phone what was happening to the dispatcher. She said to stay on the line as the county sheriff was en route, but it would take about 5 minutes or so. I told her I was going to retrieve the shotgun. She said that's not a bad idea, but only use it if I had to, with caution. I quickly realized my dad took the gun with him because they were going to the gun range. I informed the dispatcher that the gun was gone. She said to make sure to stay on the line. For a moment, everything was silent, and I thought that it may have been a burglar, and they got spooked when they realized someone was home. My heart sank into my chest when I heard not one, but 2 sets of boots walking up the stairs. I heard a heavy metal pole scraping the floor. I locked and barricaded the door to my parents' room. Then I almost passed out when I heard one of them talk. Not in any voice, but my ex-girlfriend's voice. She said, "Merry Christmas, Tommy," and I heard a male voice mockingly say, "We know you're in there." And he knocked on the door of my parents' room. I almost screamed and got underneath the bed. My ex then said, "Don't worry if you can't open the door. will open it for you. I heard the pole hit the door and the lock falling out of the door to the floor. I had to put my hand over my mouth to keep from being too loud. All of a sudden, I heard police sirens and my ex muttering, "Oh shit." They ran down the stairs to run out the front door when the officer said freeze. I heard a bunch of yelling and then an officer came in and said, "If you're in there, make yourself known." I called out to him saying I was Tommy and I called 911. He told me to come out slowly with my hands visible. As I left my parents' room, I saw the two being escorted out in handcuffs. The rest of my night consisted of paperwork and me talking to my parents who were making a 3-hour drive to come home. This incident was very disturbing to me, and I'm grateful that I reacted the way that I did. Had I not, I might be dead right now.